Zara didn't know, but one thing was certain. Whatever came next would change everything. Chara's mind was spinning as she stood in the dimly lit room, trying to make sense of everything the man, this human, had said. His warning echoed in her thoughts, growing louder with every passing second. They're coming back. They're coming to finish what they started. Who were these they he had mentioned? And what had happened to Earth all those years ago? The man, who had only just woken up, was now sitting up on the cold floor, his eyes scanning the room. His face looked pale, but there was something about him, something in the way he held himself, that seemed different from anything Zara had imagined a human would be like. He looked tired, drained, but his eyes were sharp, filled with a knowledge that Zara couldn't comprehend. "Do you know who did this to you?" Zara finally asked, her voice steady but full of curiosity and a growing sense of fear. "Who put you in that pod?" The man's eyes locked onto hers. "It wasn't a who," he said slowly, almost as if he was speaking to himself. "It was something bigger. The ones who controlled us. The ones who believed humanity was a threat." His voice grew distant, like he was remembering something painful. "They wanted to control us, erase us, but keep a few of us around. For experiments. For whatever twisted reason they had." Zara stepped closer, her thoughts racing. "Who were they?" she asked, trying to get answers. The word control kept ringing in her mind. Was it a government? A faction of humans? Or something far worse? The man shook his head slightly. "I don't know what they call themselves. But I do know that they were everywhere. Powerful. They had the resources to wipe out most of us, but they didn't count on a few surviving." He looked down at his hands as if they held some clue to his past. "I was part of an experiment, a test subject in some underground lab. The pod was supposed to preserve me until they were ready to use me again, until they were ready to finish what they started." Zara's breath caught in her throat. "Use you for what?" she whispered, though she feared the answer. He turned his head to the side, his expression hardening. "For their war. They wanted to make sure humanity didn't have a chance to rise again. But they didn't just want to destroy us. They wanted to control what was left. The survivors. The ones they could manipulate." Zara's mind was racing. Her people, the Typhorians, had been taught that the human race was no more, that they had wiped themselves out in a final, catastrophic war. But what if the truth was far darker than she had imagined? What if there were humans out there who had survived, hidden away, waiting for the chance to fight back? What if this man was just one of many who had been placed in stasis to ensure they couldn't rebuild their civilization? "Is that why you were kept in the pod?" Zara asked softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. The man nodded, his face grim. "Yes. The people who controlled us wanted to make sure we didn't rise up against them. They thought they could keep us contained, isolated, but they didn't count on those of us who were able to break free." Zara's heart pounded in her chest. What had Earth really been hiding all these years? She looked over at the other members of her team, who were standing in the doorway, watching the scene unfold. They too were struggling to understand what had just been revealed. "What are we supposed to do now?" one of her team members asked, his voice shaky. "We didn't sign up for this. We came here to explore, to gather information about an extinct species. But this..." He trailed off, clearly unsure how to process what they were hearing. Vicor, always the steady leader, stepped forward, his gaze intense. "We have no choice now. We need to figure out what happened here and why this human is still alive. If there's more to this story, more humans hidden away like him, then we need to understand what they've been through and what they want." Zara turned back to the man in the pod, her mind still reeling. "You said they're coming back. Who's coming?" The man's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and determination. "They're not human," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The ones who took control of us. The ones who destroyed Earth's civilization. They've been watching. And they've been waiting." Zara could feel her pulse quicken. "What do you mean, not human?" she asked, confused. "Who are they, then?" "Prepare for launch," said the commander, a tall, sharp-eyed Cyphorian named Ficor. He stood at the front of the ship, his silver armor gleaming in the soft light of the control room. Zara strapped herself into her seat, adjusting the helmet that was required for the journey. The ship's engines roared to life, and soon the vast emptiness of space swallowed them whole. As the ship sped through the cosmos, Zara's thoughts turned back to Earth. What would she find? What was waiting for her on that ancient, desolate world? She didn't have to wait long to find out. The journey took several days, and during that time, Zara studied the data they had on Earth. But there was nothing that seemed to explain the planet's significance, only vague references to ancient wars, mysterious disappearances, and a devastating disaster that had wiped out most of its inhabitants. What had caused the destruction? Why had the Typhorians sealed off all information about it? Then, the ship's sensors detected Earth's orbit, and the cold beauty of the planet appeared on the view screen. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The planet was a shadow of what it once was. Most of its surface was scarred, broken. The once blue oceans were now polluted, and the land was barren in many places. But there was something about Earth that intrigued her, something about the ruins below that felt alive. The ship began its descent toward Earth's surface, breaking through the atmosphere and heading for an area that had been marked on their coordinates, an ancient city that had once been a human metropolis. As they approached the ruins, Zara could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. This was it, the moment she would step onto the ground of a world that had once teemed with life. And as the ship landed amidst the broken buildings and abandoned streets, she could sense that something was waiting for her, something far beyond her understanding. "Let's move out," Vicor commanded. "We've got a job to do." Zara and her team suited up, preparing to step into the unknown. Little did they know, they were about to uncover secrets that would change the course of history forever. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, a presence she couldn't explain. And in the distance, amidst the wreckage, a faint signal blinked on her communicator, one that shouldn't have been there. "What is that?" she muttered, scanning the area. The signal was weak, but it was unmistakable. Someone, something, was still out there. And Zara couldn't help but wonder if this was the first sign that humans weren't just a myth after all. The journey to Earth had been longer than Zara had expected. Although the ship traveled at incredible speeds, the vast emptiness of space made time feel slower. It was hard for her to stay focused on her mission as the reality of what she was about to do set in. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. She stared out the windows of the ship as Earth grew larger in the distance, the planet's blue surface slowly becoming visible against the dark backdrop of space. It looked peaceful from this far away, almost beautiful, nothing like the desolate wasteland she had been taught to expect. Zara felt a strange pull in her chest. She had always wondered about Earth. Could it be that the humans had been misunderstood, their true potential hidden by those who came before her? Her mind raced with questions. What if there was more to their story, more than the ancient Cyphorians had allowed her to know? But she couldn't afford to let her thoughts wander. The mission was clear: find valuable data and artifacts, explore what was left of human civilization, and bring it back to Cyphor. It was simple enough, she told herself, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead kept gnawing at her. As the ship descended toward the surface of Earth, the landscape below started to come into view. What was once a thriving planet filled with cities and vast forests was now little more than ruins. The land was scorched in many places, large patches of Earth's once thriving wilderness reduced to ash and rubble. Her scanner displayed signs of life, but not the kind she had been expecting. There was no bustling civilization, no thriving cities, just remnants, old, forgotten structures that had stood the test of time, but were now abandoned. Her team braced for impact as the ship's landing gear adjusted to Earth's unstable surface. It would be difficult to land in such an environment, but Zara had been trained for this. The ship finally touched down with a low thud. A cloud of dust and debris kicked up around them as the ship's engines powered down. "Everyone, suit up," Vicor's voice echoed over the intercom, his tone steady and calm. He was the leader of their team, a veteran of many missions, and the one who had seen it all. He'd been to dangerous planets and survived countless challenges. But Jera could sense that even he was slightly unsettled by Earth's condition. The planet was more than just abandoned, it was broken. Jara and the rest of her team donned their gear, sealing their helmets and preparing their weapons. As Jara checked her equipment, she felt a growing sense of anticipation. What would they find in the wreckage? Could there be answers about the humans here? What secrets had this once thriving civilization left behind? Once they were ready, the team stepped out onto Earth's surface, their boots sinking slightly into the soft, dusty ground. The air was thin but breathable, although it smelled old, like something that had been left forgotten for far too long. As Jara looked around, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the planet's history pressing down on her. She was walking on the very ground where humans had once lived, where their cities had flourished, where their wars and triumphs had shaped the course of their world. Now, all that was left were the ruins. "Stay alert," Vicor instructed, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The planet felt eerie, and the silence was unsettling. There were no signs of life, no sounds of animals, no buzzing of insects, just an endless, haunting quiet. Jera's eyes flicked over the remnants of a collapsed building. The structure was once a towering skyscraper, but now it was nothing more than a twisted skeleton of metal and stone. It looked like something had torn it apart, but Jera had no idea what that could have been. She approached the wreckage cautiously, her boots crunching over debris. "What do you think happened here?" she asked, her voice low as she stepped past chunks of concrete and twisted metal. "I don't know," Vicor replied, his face tense. "But this isn't a normal collapse. The damage is too unnatural." Jara paused for a moment, staring at the ruins. She could feel the weight of something dark hanging in the air, a feeling she couldn't shake. The buildings, though shattered and broken, didn't look like they had simply been abandoned. It was as if something had violently torn through them. Something powerful, something far beyond the forces of nature. "Keep moving," Vicor ordered, breaking the silence. "We need to find the artifacts and gather whatever data we can. We're not here for sightseeing." Jara nodded and continued forward, trying to push the unease from her mind. They'd walked through the ruins, scanning their surroundings with their advanced equipment. The once bustling streets were now empty and filled with strange, decayed objects. The remains of vehicles, long since rusted and broken, littered the ground. Jera's eyes were drawn to a building in the distance. It looked different from the others. It was still mostly intact. It wasn't as massive as the destroyed structures surrounding it, but it stood out like a monument to something long past. It seemed almost familiar. "Commander, over there," Jera said, pointing to the building. Vicor followed her gaze, then gave a slight nod. "Let's investigate." The team made their way toward the building, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they got closer, Jera felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. There was something about this place that felt wrong. The closer they got, the more intense the feeling became. When they reached the entrance, they found the doors to the building were partially ajar, as if someone, or something, had entered and left in a hurry. Jera pushed the door open, her pulse quickening. The interior was dimly lit, the air stale, but the room itself was strangely untouched by time. There were old, faded murals on the walls, paintings of humans, though they were difficult to make out in the dim light. Some of them depicted groups of people standing together. Others showed them in what appeared to be some kind of battle. Jera studied them carefully, trying to understand what they meant. She had heard stories of humans fighting wars, but seeing these images made it all feel real. "What is this place?" Jera whispered. Vicor stepped forward, examining the murals as well. I think this was a place of significance to the humans. A temple, a meeting hall. We'll need to analyze everything here carefully. As they moved deeper into the building, Jera felt a strange pulse through her equipment. It wasn't an energy source or a signal from a device. It was more like a vibration, a hum that resonated deep within her bones. She turned to Vicor. "Do you feel that?" He paused for a moment, his face hardening. "Yes, it's coming from below. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of price," he said quietly, looking down at the ground, his mind racing. "How can I be sure that I'm making the right choice?" Zephy stepped closer to him, her voice softer now. "You can never be sure, Rain, but sometimes we must take risks to find out who we truly are. You may lose something, yes, but you may also gain something greater than you ever imagined." Rain closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words sink in. The price would be real, no matter what he wished for. But perhaps it was worth it. Perhaps the risk was what made it worth pursuing. He didn't want to spend his life wondering what could have been. He wanted to take that leap, to embrace whatever came his way. With a deep breath, Rain opened his eyes, locking onto Zephy's calm gaze. "I've decided." Zephy smiled, a small but knowing smile. "Then speak your wish, and let the universe hear it. But remember, once you ask, there is no going back." Rain took one last look at the glowing forest around him. His heart raced as he made his decision. The price would be steep, but the potential to change his life was worth it. With a steady voice, he finally spoke. "I wish for a life full of adventure. I want to experience everything the world has to offer, to live without limits." Zephy's eyes sparkled, and for the briefest moment, Rain felt a sense of peace. The decision had been made. Rain's heart beat like a drum in his chest as he stood before Zephy, ready to make his wish. The words hung in the air between them like a promise, an invitation to change his life forever. He had chosen to seek adventure, to experience everything the world had to offer, to live without limits. But as the words left his mouth, something deep within him stirred, something darker. Power. The temptation of power. Zephy's calm smile remained unchanged as she listened to his wish. She didn't react immediately, her eyes glinting with an ancient understanding. "A life full of adventure," she repeated softly, almost as if savoring the words. "You have chosen a path that will lead you to many great things, Rain. But be warned, adventure is not always as glamorous as it seems." Rain looked at her, trying to keep his resolve strong. He had made his decision. He wanted excitement, challenges, and to live a life full of purpose. That was his wish, and nothing was going to change that. He had always been drawn to the idea of stepping out of his comfort zone, of breaking free from the boring, repetitive life he had always known. This was his chance to make it all happen. But as Zephy's words echoed in his mind, a new thought emerged. What if he could ask for more? What if adventure could come with power? True power. The kind of power that could bend the world to his will. Could he take his wish further? Could he become more than just a man seeking thrills? Could he control the world around him? The thought came to him so suddenly that it almost startled him. His chest tightened as his mind raced. What if his adventure wasn't just about traveling the world or experiencing new things? What if he could change the world itself? What if he could have power, real power, at his fingertips? He had always felt small, ordinary, invisible in a world full of bigger, stronger people. But what if that could change? "Zephy," Rain said, his voice shaking slightly. "What if I wanted more? What if I wanted the power to shape my own destiny, to make the world bend to my will? Can I ask for that?" Zephy's eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze more intense than before. She had been waiting for this. She had known that the temptation of power would eventually take hold of him. Power, Rain, is a dangerous thing. It can lead you to greatness, but it can also destroy you. The more you take, the more you lose. You will change in ways you cannot predict. And once you have power, it is difficult to walk away from it. Rain felt a cold shiver run down his spine. But at the same time, a part of him was excited, drawn to the idea of power. The power to control, to command, to be in charge of his own life and others. He could be more than he had ever dreamed. This was his chance to escape his ordinary life and become someone who mattered. He could change everything. I understand the risks, Rain said, trying to push the fear down. But what if I can handle it? What if I'm the one who can use power for good? I want to feel unstoppable. I want to change the world. Zephy was silent for a moment, and the air around them seemed to grow heavier. The soft glow of the forest dimmed, and the stars above flickered as if they, too, were waiting for her answer. Finally, she spoke again, her voice low and serious. Power is not something that can be controlled easily, Rain. It feeds on desire, and desire can twist you. There are many who have sought power only to be consumed by it. You must decide if you are willing to pay the price for that kind of strength. Her words cut deep, and Rain felt a flicker of doubt in his heart. But the temptation was still there. It burned inside him, urging him to go further, to ask for more. He couldn't ignore it. He had always felt small, and now here was his chance to become someone who could change the world, to become someone who wouldn't be ignored. What if I can control it? He asked, his voice more firm now. What if I'm strong enough to handle the power and use it wisely? Zephy studied him carefully, her eyes almost unreadable. You may believe that now, but power has a way of changing you. It makes you question your morality, your beliefs, even your identity. What you think is right may not be what is right. Once you start, you may not be able to stop. Rain's thoughts spun in a whirlwind. He had always wanted more excitement, more meaning, more significance. Power could give him that. It could give him the control he had always craved. The world was full of so many obstacles, so many people telling him what to do. But with power, he could be free of all of that. He could bend reality to his will. No one could stop him. He looked into Zephy's eyes, trying to find any trace of doubt or hesitation in her words. But all he saw was truth, a truth he was unwilling to ignore. Power could make him everything he had ever dreamed of. I don't want to be ordinary anymore, Rain said quietly, almost to himself. I don't want to be powerless. Zephy's expression softened for a moment, as if she understood his pain. I can give you the power you seek, Rain, she said gently. But be prepared. The world will change around you, and so will you. Power will change you in ways you cannot predict. It may give you everything you've ever wanted, but it will also take things from you. Things you might not be willing to lose. Rain stood still, the weight of her words sinking in. Was he truly ready for the consequences of his choice? Could he live with the changes power would bring? Could he live with the cost? But in that moment, the fear inside him faded, replaced by the burning desire for something more. He wanted to be free. He wanted to be the one in control. He couldn't stand being weak, being overlooked. The temptation of power was too strong. I want the power to change everything, Rain declared, his voice steady. I want the strength to shape my own future and the world around me. Zephy didn't say anything at first. She simply nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and understanding. Very well, she said softly. You will have the power you seek, but remember, Rain, the price will be high. You may lose yourself in the process. Without another word, Zephy raised her hand toward him, and a wave of energy surged through the air. It was like nothing Rain had ever felt before. Pure, raw energy, coursing through him, filling him with a sense of power that made his heart race. It was as if the entire universe had opened up to him, offering him the chance to command everything he had ever wanted. Rain gasped, feeling the power settle deep within him. He could feel it, the surge of energy, the strength, the control. It was intoxicating. For a moment, he felt invincible. He was no longer the ordinary man he had been. He was someone else now, someone with power. Now you are ready, Zephy said quietly. But remember, Rain, the temptation of power is not easily resisted. You will be tested, and you will have to decide how to use it. Rain stood there, his mind reeling with the possibilities. He could do anything now. The world was his to control. But as the rush of power began to settle, a small, lingering doubt remained in the back of his mind. What would it cost him? What would he lose along the way? But for now, the power was his, and nothing else mattered. The power surged inside of Rain, stronger than he had ever imagined. It was as though every part of him had been touched by something greater, something far beyond his understanding. He could feel it in his fingertips, in the air around him, and deep within his chest. It was as if the entire universe was now at his command, waiting for him to shape it. But as the energy settled, a strange feeling washed over him. For the first time, he didn't feel invincible. He felt uncertain. The weight of the power inside him seemed to grow heavier with every passing second. The excitement of having control began to fade, replaced by the realization that power came with responsibility. Responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. Rain looked at Zephy, who stood silently before him, her expression unreadable. She had given him the power he sought, but she hadn't warned him what would happen next. He had asked for adventure, but now, with the power to change everything, he realized that adventure came at a cost. The world was no longer the same. He was no longer the same. But then, something in his gut told him that there was more to this than just a simple wish. Rain took a cautious step forward. If I can ask for anything, what's the catch? What's the price? At that, Zephy's expression turned serious, and the air around them seemed to shift, becoming heavier, more intense. Every wish has a price, human. It may not be something you can see at first, but it will always have consequences. You will not be able to make your wish without facing the challenges that come with it. The universe will not grant a wish without testing the one who desires it. Rain's heart skipped a beat. He had heard stories of wishes gone wrong, of people who had asked for too much and lost everything. Was this his chance to change his life forever? Or was it a trap, something he should be cautious about? The idea of asking for something powerful felt dangerous, but the temptation was undeniable. Zephy continued, her voice calm yet firm. You have 1 hour to decide. In that time, think carefully. Once you make your choice, there is no turning back. Rain stood there, unsure of what to do. The possibilities swirled in his mind, but so did the fear of making the wrong choice. What if he asked for something that caused him more pain than happiness? What if the consequences of his wish were worse than the life he had now? As the minutes ticked by, Rain's mind raced. He thought of all the things he could ask for. The wealth, the fame, the adventures. The life he had always dreamed of. But was that what he truly wanted? Or was there something more, something deeper he needed? Zephy stood silently, watching him, waiting for him to make his decision. Her eyes never left his, as if she could see right through him, into the very core of his soul. Rain took a deep breath, trying to clear his thoughts. He realized that this was no ordinary decision. This was the kind of choice that could change everything. I need more time, Rain said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. Zephy nodded, as if she had expected that response. I will give you the time you need. But remember, the clock is ticking. And with that, Rain was left alone in the glowing forest, standing between the possibility of a dream come true and the fear of an unknown cost. Rain stood in the glowing forest, feeling the weight of Zephy's words pressing down on him. The price of a wish, he repeated to himself. The words echoed in his mind like a warning. He had heard tales of wishes gone wrong, stories of people who had asked for too much and paid the ultimate price. His heart was racing. What if he made the wrong choice? What if his wish came with consequences he couldn't even imagine? The forest around him seemed to close in, its shimmering trees and soft purple sky now feeling distant and almost eerie. Zephy stood still before him, her gaze unwavering, her expression calm. She had told him to think carefully, that his wish would not come without a cost. But what did that really mean? Could he trust her? Could he trust this strange, magical world he had been pulled into? Zephy's voice broke through his thoughts. I understand that you're hesitant, but you must make your decision soon. Time is not something we can control. She spoke so calmly, but Rain couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away from him faster than he realized. He glanced around, his eyes darting to the glowing trees and distant stars, and he felt completely out of place. He had been an ordinary man in an ordinary life. Now he was standing in a world that was beyond anything he had ever known, surrounded by mystery and power. The possibilities of what he could wish for were endless. Power, wealth, love, adventure. There was so much he could ask for. But what did he truly want? What was worth the price? What is the price, Zephy? Rain asked, his voice trembling slightly. He needed answers before he could make such a life-changing decision. He had to know what he was getting himself into. Zephy didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step closer to him, her silver skin glowing softly in the dim light. The price will vary, she said. It may not be something you see right away, but every wish changes the balance of the world. When you ask for something, something else must give. Zephy, Rain said, his voice shaky. I feel different. I can feel the power, but it's not what I thought it would be. It's not just about adventure anymore. It's more than that. Zephy nodded, her eyes softening with a mixture of understanding and sadness. You have made your choice, Rain, and now you must live with it. Power is not simply a tool to be used for personal gain. It is a force that shapes everything around you. It will change you in ways you cannot foresee. And once you begin to use it, there is no going back. Rain felt a knot form in his stomach. He had asked for power, but he hadn't fully understood what that meant. What would it take from him? What would he lose in the process? The answers weren't clear, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. For a moment, Rain closed his eyes, trying to steady his thoughts. The world around him felt distant, almost unreal. The forest seemed to hum with the energy of the power he now possessed, but it was a hum that didn't feel comforting. It was alien, foreign, like a force that wanted to take over, to change him into something he wasn't sure he could control. What do I do now? Rain asked, his voice filled with doubt. I've been given the power, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Zephy took a step forward, her movements graceful, as if she were floating just above the ground. The power will reveal itself to you, Rain. It will call to you when the time is right. But remember, with every choice comes a consequence. You can use this power for good, to shape the world in ways that benefit others. Or you can use it for your own desires, to bend the world to your will. But be careful. Once you begin to use it, the line between good and bad becomes blurry. The thought hit Rain hard. He had never imagined that the world he sought to control would be so complicated. It wasn't just about getting what he wanted anymore. The idea of shaping the world, of changing people's lives, came with its own moral dilemmas. Would he use his power to make the world a better place, or would he be tempted to use it for selfish reasons? His mind raced as he thought about the possibilities. He could do so much with this power. He could fix the mistakes of his past, rewrite his future, and even change the lives of those around him. But there was a darker side to it, too. What if he began to lose himself in the process? What if his desire for more became all-consuming, leading him down a path he couldn't return from? As Zephy's words echoed in his mind, Rain felt a pull deep within him. He could feel the power reaching out, beckoning him to use it. The temptation was overwhelming, and for the first time, he realized just how easy it would be to fall into the trap of selfishness. What if he became the kind of person he had always despised, the kind who used others for their own gain? I'm not sure I can do this, Rain admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I knew what I wanted, but now it feels like too much. What if I'm not the right person to hold this kind of power? Zeffie's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human, vulnerable. The power chooses the person, Rain. It does not care about your past or your mistakes, but you must choose what to do with it. The power itself is neutral. It is your choices that will determine what kind of person you become. Rain looked down at his hands, the power still thrumming through his fingertips. It felt like he was holding the very fabric of the universe, yet he couldn't shake the fear that he might lose control of it. What if he didn't make the right choices? What if he used the power for the wrong reasons? The idea of becoming someone he didn't recognize terrified him. What happens if I use it wrong? Rain asked, the fear in his voice unmistakable. What if I lose myself in the process? Zeffie's eyes darkened, and for a brief moment, Rain saw something ancient in her gaze, something that spoke of countless others who had made the same choice he was making now. There are those who have used power and been consumed by it. They lose their humanity, their compassion, and in the end, they become mere shadows of what they once were. Power has a way of stripping you of everything that matters. Rain. If you aren't careful, it will change you into someone you can't recognize. The weight of her words hit him like a wave. He had been so focused on the idea of power, so eager to escape his ordinary life, that he hadn't fully considered the consequences. What if he lost himself? What if his desire for control destroyed everything he cared about? For a long time, there was silence between them. Rain stood frozen, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The power inside him still pulsed, still called to him, but now it felt like a burden. Could he truly handle it? Could he use it for good? Or would he become just another person who had been consumed by the very thing they sought? Zeffie finally spoke, her voice low and steady. The choice is yours. Rain, you can use the power to change the world, to help others, to make things right. But you must understand that the choices you make will shape your future. The consequences will follow you, no matter where you go. Rain took a deep breath, his mind slowly beginning to clear. The path before him wasn't easy, and there was no clear answer. But one thing was certain. The choice he made now would change everything. There would be no turning back. His decision would define who he became, and he could either rise above the temptation of power or fall into its dark embrace. I don't know what's right anymore, Rain admitted, his voice raw with emotion. But I know I can't walk away. I have to choose. I have to live with the consequences. Zeffie nodded, her expression unreadable once again. That is the first step, Rain. You have accepted that the choices you make matter. Now you must decide who you want to be. The power is yours, but what you do with it is up to you. Rain looked out at the world around him, the forest glowing with an otherworldly light. The power surged within him, urging him to act, to take control. But now, for the first time, he understood that power was not just a tool, it was a test, and the choice he made would define him forever. With a deep breath, Rain made his decision. He couldn't walk away from this. He had already come too far. The power was his, and now it was up to him to choose how to use it. Rain's mind spun as he stood on the edge of a new world, one where everything felt within his reach. The power within him was undeniable, like a storm ready to unleash its fury. He had felt its surge, its strength. He had made the choice to embrace it, to shape his own future, to take control of his destiny. But now, as the quiet stillness of the forest surrounded him, he began to wonder if he had truly understood what he had set in motion. Power was intoxicating. It was like nothing Rain had ever felt before. It filled his body, made him feel stronger, more capable. He could sense everything around him in a way that was almost supernatural. He could feel the pulse of life in the trees, the movement of every animal in the distance, even the tiny flicker of the stars above. It was as if the world itself was alive under his touch. He could change it. He could reshape it. The possibilities seemed endless, and for a moment, it felt like the world was his to command. But the excitement was fading, slowly being replaced by something else. Unease, a strange, nagging feeling that something was wrong. The power had come so easily, so suddenly, and now it seemed almost too much to bear. He had wanted control, but now, he couldn't help but wonder if he had bitten off more than he could chew. Was this what he had wanted all along, or had he been blinded by the promise of something greater? "Zephy?" Rain asked, his voice uncertain. "I feel different, but it's not just the power, it's something else. I can't explain it. Something's changing inside me." Zephy, who had remained silent beside him, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of something more, something older, something more knowing. "That is the price of power, Rain, the price you have to pay for what you've chosen. Power doesn't come freely, and it doesn't come without consequences. Every choice you make, every action you take, will have its price, and sooner or later, the true cost will reveal itself to you." Rain turned to face her, his mind racing. "What do you mean?" "I knew there would be challenges, but I didn't think there would be this. I thought I could handle it. I thought I knew what I was getting into." Zephy's gaze softened as she looked at him, her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. "The power has already begun to change you, Rain. It changes everyone who takes it. It begins in small ways, and at first you may not notice it. But eventually you will. You will feel it in your heart, in your mind, in the way you see the world. And you will have to decide if the price is worth paying."